This is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're back talking about Miss Marvel episode 2, Crushed.
There's a story about Muniba's family from during the partition. You know, they had to get onto the last train that was getting out of the city. Yeah? Now, her mother, Muniba's mother, Sana, who was just a toddler then, she got separated from her parents on the train station. Her father tried to find her, but, he was injured and needed a walking stick to get around, so he couldn't really keep up with her. But here's the thing. Nobody knows how that little toddler, Sana, managed to get back on the train just
before the train pulled out of the station.
Well, what did Sana say happened? How did she find her father?
Well, Sana always said that she followed a trail of stars.
Right back to her father.
Welcome back, fellow Defenders, to TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about Miss Marvel episode 2, Crushed. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Defenders. I am one of your other hosts, John. Yes, I return.
Yes, welcome back, baby.
Thank you.
Good to have you back on the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been missing you the last couple of weeks. We've had Chris doing The Boys alternately. From America. He was over in New York.
Yes.
We had Irene return.
Great stuff.
Yeah, to do the first episode of Miss Marvel. And you've now watched both episodes of Miss Marvel, all the episodes of The Boys. You've caught up on Stranger Things, about 600 shows that you've missed over 2 weeks.
I know.
Probably more fun to be on holidays than having to watch all those shows. But you've enjoyed the shows, haven't you?
Yeah, the shows have been phenomenally good. Yeah, Miss Marvel, really enjoyed it. These first 2 episodes, just great feel good. Mm-hmm. It's kind of what I wanted after seeing the trailer. The trailer seemed to be really give me hope, and loved it. Yeah. So really excited to talk about it.
Absolutely. And Amin Vellani, who plays the character of Kamala Khan, she's such a great central character in the show.
Perfect. Yeah, so bubbly.
Yeah.
Full of fun, youth, just really, really good. Yeah.
I have to say, one of the descriptions that's out there is basically saying that all the other shows have been following on from Endgame, that kind of, dour ending because we lost 2 big characters in Endgame, and all of the other adult heroes in this world are kind of dealing with the fallout of that. Whereas Kamala Khan, we haven't even got a reference to whether someone disappeared in the blip or anything like that. It is really just the positivity of a kid who loves superheroes getting superpowers, which is completely different to the stuff we've seen over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel very, almost like Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
It's Peter Parker, but in Kamala Khan, and just that youthful expression, and then being given these powers, but she's absolutely excited by them.
Yeah.
Thinks this is the most awesomest thing ever.
Exactly.
It's just really, really great.
Yeah, it's great. Excellent. And welcome back to our fellow Defenders for this discussion about Miss Marvel. Hope you've been enjoying the show so far. We are going to go into our spoiler-filled discussion about this episode of Miss Marvel in a second. If you're not subscribed to the podcast yet, please pop on over to tvpodcastindustries.com. You can find all of our links to subscribe over there. You can also leave us some feedback. There's a voicemail button on there that you can leave up to 90 seconds of your thoughts about any of the episodes that we're covering. If you also want to email us, or if you want to email us instead, you can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or join us on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries, where we have a spoiler post up for every show that we're covering, which is a lot.
Yes, a lot of different shows that we're covering. Yeah, coming thick and fast. Soon, Umbrella Academy will be with us as well.
That's right. Yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, let's get on to our spoiler-filled review of episode 2 of Miss Marvel, Crushed. Derek, what are some of the episode details?
Well, the executive producers of the show are Kevin Feige, Louis D'Esposito, Victoria Alonso, Bisha K. Ali, Adila Larba, and Bilal Fallah. The head writer for the show is Bisha K. Ali, as I mentioned last week, a comedian from the UK. The episode here was directed by Mira Manon. She directed an episode of The Punisher, so we have spoken about her before on the show. And she also directed episode 9 of the first season of Snowfall, one of your favourite shows, John.
Yeah, love that show. Still got 2 seasons to go. It's on season 5, and I only got to season 3, the end of season 3, that was on Disney Plus.
That's right.
But the other 2 aren't there. So
I think season 4 came out while you were away, I think.
I hadn't spotted that, so yes.
So there you go, something to watch. The reason I mention it as well is because Adila Laraba and Bilal Falah, who directed the first episode of Miss Marvel, directed the first episode of Snowfall as well. So that's where the connection comes from for a lot of these, a lot of the directors.
Well, that is top quality stuff then. Yeah, good stuff.
Absolutely. And the episode was written by Kate Gritman. She worked as an assistant on Game of Thrones, but this is her first episode of Marvel TV.
Okay.
So, so great to have her on board for this episode.
Marvel newbie, I guess.
Exactly. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for Miss Marvel episode 2, Crushed?
Sure. Excited by her new powers, Kamala Khan begins putting them to the test. With Bruno's help, she discovers that she can create hard light shapes, which allow her to reach places she never could otherwise. Bruno works out that the bangle activated Kamala's powers, but the real power is within her. At their mosque, Kamala's friend, Nakia Badir, decides to stand for elections to become the first female member of the mosque leadership. After meeting Cameron, a new British-Pakistani senior at school, Kamala, Nakia, and Bruno attend a party organised by Zoe so that Kamala can get to know him. When the party is cut short by the police, Cameron gives them all a lift home and makes friends with Kamala to the annoyance of Bruno. Meanwhile, Agent Diva of the Department of Damage Control interrogates Zoe about the superhero who saved her at AvengerCon. At a family dinner, Kamala's father shares a familiar story about how her grandmother got out of India during the partition. But Kamala blacks out and has a vision of a mysterious woman calling to her. Kamala investigates her family history, and after talking to her grandmother Nani and the Illuminantes at the Eid celebrations, she learns a bit more about the owner of her new bangle, her great-grandmother Aisha. But the party is interrupted when a young boy falls from the tower, and Kamala has to use her new powers to save him. Before he's safe, Kamala has another vision of the woman, and almost lets him fall. The commotion attracts the attention of Agent Diva. As she uses her powers to evade them, Cameron arrives just in time in his car to help her escape. In the back seat, his mother, Najma, has been waiting to meet Kamala, and she's the same woman from her vision.
So nice big cliffhanger here with Najma arriving, the mother of Cameron.
Yeah.
Not just a mysterious, really hot-looking new boy in school. Obviously, a big connection to Kamala. And I wonder if he's just here.
Well, that's it. It's like, is it something to do with Aisha? Is it a sister or a cousin? How's this related to the Khan family? Because we see Kamala Khan's mum, Maniba, really kind of knowing that all that stuff from their grandmother needs to be kind of kept away. We hear her here saying, yes, you should know about your past, you should tell your story, but just not this one, about this event where during the partition of India.
Yes, and possibly before then as well. Yeah,
exactly.
We are going to talk about this show as we have the last episode. We're going to talk about our 3 marvelous moments.
Excellent stuff.
Do you like that better than Aaron and Lucas liked it, John? Marvelous moments?
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah.
Good stuff. Excellent. Okay, we'll keep it again for another episode.
How could you not like this, Irene? I need answers.
Well, let's go into our marvelous moment number 1. I want to talk about the training montage in this episode because, as you kind of mentioned up front, Kamala's enjoyment of having superpowers is really on display here. I love even when she's talking to Bruno to begin with, she says she was filming it on her phone and she was trying to see if she had the powers of Ant-Man. So she was trying to see if she could control ants with her mind. Could she get big? Could she get small? All that kind of stuff. What's the reasoning she gives that she wants to try like Ant-Man? Because just like him, she looks young for her age, just like Paul Rudd does. Exactly. I thought that was lots of fun.
Well, that's it, and I love like the cool entrance to school where it's the repeat from episode 1, but it's just she's filled with confidence and happiness ultimately that she has these powers. It is you know, she's absolutely embraced what she's been given. There's no kind of second thoughts. There's no doubting. There's no worry.
Yeah.
This is awesome. I am what I want to be, which is almost a superhero. You know, she reveres Captain Marvel, you know, loves her. And here, I just think it's so kind of positive.
Isn't it? And it's so
just
different.
Exudes that confidence of her
Exactly.
as she walks through the school hall to her locker.
And such a different entrance as well, not just the confidence, because she has the confidence, the interactions with everybody else around her feel so much more natural. She feels like last time it felt like she was on the lower rung of school, whereas this time everybody's smiling at her. She's giving them all a wink and a nod. She's saying hello to the lesbian couple and wishing them the best for their relationship, you know, really enjoying her time being around all everybody in school, just because she's got that confidence coming out of her. Really enjoy that. But it leads into her bringing Bruno, into the stage area, I guess, the auditorium, I guess, in the school backstage, and showing him her new powers. Again, another fun moment where she uses the hard light in her hand and it gets too heavy for her and drops to the ground, and then she almost kills Bruno, but saves him and goes, "Well, I saved you," you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I love, you know, I love how she is kind of showing her powers to Bruno. I love that Bruno's so kind of in awe of it as well. And, you know, she has a great turn of phrase, says it's like an idea coming to life.
Exactly.
And Bruno's very quick to see. I look that whole joke where she creates the huge fist, but she can't hold it up, and so it just drops. And it's like super strength is obviously not part of this equation. And then to the training montage up on the top of the roof where she's doing press ups. It's like build your strength and all that, and gradually she's able to focus her thoughts on this hard light so that she can step on them. I love the gag that it's like, you've got to let me go. You know, you feel that they're going to fall off the building. And it's just a smaller building on the top.
Like maybe a 6-inch drop to the ground.
Really good,
Really good fun. Really good fun. So the powers that we're seeing her use here now, she's creating platforms to kind of run through the sky effectively. Felt a little bit like Iceman, to me. Do you remember that kind of style that he had where he was doing the kind of slopes of ice?
Certainly when she skids down sort of a long run of the hard light. Yeah, exactly.
I thought that was quite cool seeing that in this universe as well. But still nods back to the comics. Again, we see her later on in the episode using her massive fist, her expanding out her hand to try and catch the boy that's falling. So again, nods to the way her powers are in the comic books, but using hard light to create whatever she wants to, as opposed to her just being stretchy.
Yes,
effectively.
Exactly. But I mean, maybe this power will develop further. I mean, ultimately with this whole montage on the roof, it's about her understanding, getting to control her powers. So over time, it might evolve, as she learns more about the bangle and what this power means ultimately.
And an even bigger reveal in the episode from the monitoring that Bruno's doing, that the power is actually inside her and the bangle has either activated it or is channeling it. So even if she loses the bangle, it seems like she could have power inside her. Now, we mentioned before that in the comic books, she's an Inhuman, so a person who has power inside them that's activated by Terrigen crystals. I didn't want to go too deep into the mythology of it because it's obviously different in the show here. But that still kind of stacks up against that a little bit. Maybe the bangle is some form of Terrigen crystal activation of the Inhuman inside her. Maybe they will bring back in Inhumans in the TV show.
Even the look of the power is crystalline, so it kind of nods to that for sure. And maybe this is the sort of the reintroduction or the reimagining of Inhumans. For sure.
Absolutely. We did get Ensign Mount back as Black Bolt earlier on this year. Maybe we'll see him back again in a different form in the future. And then everybody will have to go out and watch all of the Inhumans show. I only got to about 6 episodes of the 8.
Well, I don't think you do. I mean, I think, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has a lot of Inhuman stuff in
Certainly
there,
does.
and that's really good.
Yep.
I think, it's a shame about Inhumans, but I mean, it would be odd that you cut that out, certainly as Marvel holds the rights. It's just, can't be not everything is a success ultimately, but
Exactly.
it's how you sort of bring it back and get the control on it. Like, I guess Kevin Feige and Louis Esposito are kind of doing. And I mean, if Kamala Khan is an Inhuman, has that Terrigen power, then thumbs up from me in how they're bringing back Inhumans, and even with the nod with Black Bolt in Multiverse of Madness.
Exactly.
I mean, I was really happy that happened, because he's such a, he has, I mean, I've never followed Inhumans really that much, but I mean, Black Bolt is, a big character in Marvel.
He certainly is. Yeah. And if they don't want to bring back the rest of the Inhumans, it does give them the opportunity to bring back Quake from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., who was an Inhuman. So they have a possibility of bringing back Quake, which would be awesome. But overall, really like this. Really like the idea that she's getting more used to her powers. We don't see training montages that often, especially because we've had so many established characters with these Marvel TV shows. Even with Moon Knight, the idea of it is that the characters have been around. They've been using the powers. It was only Stephen in Moon Knight that didn't know the powers, and eventually built up to being able to tap into them.
Yeah.
Whereas here we have a person who's learning from scratch and seeing what their abilities can do, which
And
I really enjoy.
I don't want to make the comparison to Spider-Man all the time, because Kamala Khan and Ms. Marvel, it's her own thing. It's a different thing. It certainly is from that tradition of Peter Parker from back in the 60s. And most of the Spider-Man movies, you've seen Peter, bitten by the spider, then has having to learn and understand what he can do now with his body, and certainly in terms of the web slinging and the swinging around through the skyscrapers of New York. And so here it is the same thing, and I think that's a cool idea. And I really like her doing it with Bruno, and with Bruno's help, because like these two are really good friends. And I think, just coming back to her cool entrance into school, it gets disrupted when she bumps into Cameron. And then she's all of a fluster.
Yeah.
So hopefully Cameron doesn't form a wedge too deep here with between Kamala and Bruno, because we do have that moment where Bruno is brought into the office of the therapist, the school counselor.
Yes.
And
G. Wilson, yes.
Yeah, and where he's offered a place on Caltech. It's all paid for. It is the Prada moment.
Devil Wears Prada. Yes.
It is the Prada moment from The Devil Wears Prada.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And it's all paid for. He spends the semester there. It's dormitories, laboratories, Caltech, but it's in California, not in New Jersey. Yeah.
And I think this actually answers a point that Lucas had made on last week's episode, about the fact that Bruno's this kind of level of genius and there wasn't much explanation behind it. But this is how much of a genius he is. He's able to get himself into a fully paid scholarship for a semester at Caltech for people who are of advanced intelligence, who have more knowledge than their other schoolmates, effectively. So, it's a big moment for him, and he's willing to give it up because he wants to stay by Kamala. And then this wedge is coming in from Cameron.
Exactly.
So I love this story between them all. It makes a lot of sense. It does feel like Bruno is that level of intelligence of Tony Stark, basically.
Well,
and this is his opportunity
exactly.
to do something with it. And he may give it up for Kamala.
Well, and you see with the end credits, he's got the atom rings around him. So,
Ooh, very good. Nice catch, Jack.
Yeah.
Nice catch. That it for the training montage, our first Marvelous moment?
Absolutely. I think we should go on to our Marvelous moment number 2.
Yeah, got to talk about Cameron. The big new introduction of Cameron in this episode. Let's talk about this new character. Pakistani British character.
Dreamy.
Very dreamy.
Handsome.
Yes.
Piercings. And Kamala sort of all agog over him.
Yeah. He knows it too, doesn't he?
I guess so, the way he walked out of the pool after effectively. I did kind of like that, though. He jumps off the top of the roof into the pool. It's like, ooh, belly flop. Yeah. But he walks out confidently. He's like, that didn't hurt. And you're like, it must have killed.
I love it though. Yeah, it's really interesting. A really nice introduction to this character. And instantly, as you mentioned, Bruno really jealous of this guy. She's not seen Kamala act like this around anybody before, it seems.
Yeah, exactly.
I really like this, and he's a really confident guy. A great moment when Kamala's brother sees the two of them having a lunch date together, effectively, and he pretends that the reason why he has a British accent is because he's obsessed with Great British Bake Off and puts on a Pakistani accent, convincing her brother that it's actually a long lost cousin that he hasn't seen in years. Literally convincing him going, I do remember you, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, but his fiancée knows otherwise.
Definitely.
She's definitely onto the tricks.
She sees the ruse without a doubt.
You know, I love the fact as well they're kind of bonding or getting to know one another through the Bollywood movies like Bazagir, and you have Bruno coming in going, well, I watched that as well. I thought it was really pleasant kind of thing, you know, and they're listening
Bruno,
to
you didn't get it.
and they're listening. I love this. They're listening to the Sweat Shop Boys. I just thought of Pet Shop Boys.
Of course.
You know, riff on the Pet Shop Boys, and just this huge crush forming from Kamala to Cameron.
And don't forget our Easter egg right here. I know everybody probably noticed it, but the reference to Kingo and Kingo Senior, the character from the Eternals, who's been a Bollywood actor for over 100 years, isn't it? And every time he gets too old, he creates a Kingo Jr. to come in and take over from his father. But it's all been Kumail Nanjiani, who is in the role in Eternals. So I love that they've referenced this, because it would make no sense at all, given that they're Bollywood fans, if they didn't know about Kingo. So of course you mention him here.
Yeah, exactly. I love the tension that Bruno is bringing to all of this, where with the, as they're escaping the party because the police arrive, they're all in the car. Kamala's kind of like going, oh, I love the color of this. And Bruno's just like, it's black. He says, well, I like Bollywood movies as well. And then at the end where Cameron is like, yeah, really good to meet you. Nakia, Miguel, Brian instead of Bruno. And he's like, he knows it's Bruno. He's just calling me Brian.
Very bold.
Yeah, very bold.
But it does play into the central story of what's going on here. Kamala has been trying to uncover more and more detail about the bangle throughout the episode, trying to ask her mom and trying to ask her dad about the history of her family, about her great-grandmother Aisha, who's the original owner of this bangle, or at least that's where it came from, through her grandmother to her.
Yeah.
But we see early on that she has her first vision of this woman calling to her. If you notice, they were talking about the story of the train during partition, that her grandmother had been led back to the train by these stars, possibly connected to the powers of Miss Marvel that we're seeing here. And when this woman appears in the vision to her, when she blacks out and this woman appears, you hear the noises of the train, you see the lights of a train coming towards her, and then you see her again later on in the episode. And then at the end, we find out it's actually Cameron's mother. So has she been reaching out to Kamala?
Well, exactly. I mean, I guess it was signposted through all of this, in the sense of anyone with a British accent is always going to play the bad guy. It's kind of Star Wars 101 that the Imperial officers are going to be British actors. Here we have Cameron, who has the British accent.
Yes.
And so he must be the evil one. We have even with the partition story, it is about the British leaving a huge mess where families were split, because India partitioned to Pakistan and Bangladesh, and these families on different sides of a new border, effectively.
Yeah.
And like they say, everyone has a partition story.
Yeah.
And so, it's kind of, I don't know whether it was intentional, but it was like, yes, the British are bad guys here. And so, unsurprisingly, even in that hero moment where Cameron rescues Kamala from the Department of Damage Control, in the end, who's on the back seat but his mom, who is the person from the two visions.
Exactly. I'm only going to go halfway there with you, though, John, because I'm not sure yet I don't think Cameron's evil. I think there's just a duplicitousness. He might be seen as evil from maybe the Illuminantes, but I feel like they know something about Aisha. They know something about Kamala's family that nobody else would tell them. I would tell her, because they're trying to keep this actual history of her family back from her. I think they're going to be the ones that reveal the history of the bangle, or the history of who Aisha is. Potentially it's another branch of that family who know what happened to Aisha truly.
Exactly. I get the impression Muniba, Kamala's mum, is the one that knows the reality of this, you know, and there's some kind of shaming element, but which I think to the rest of the community in terms of the Illuminantes that,
love that, by the way.
Well, absolutely. Just the all-seeing.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
The all-seeing community moms. Yep.
Exactly. Loved it. But, you know, they talk about, she killed someone, brought shame, you know, whatever it may be.
I heard she had another man on the side. I heard she had many men on the side and loads of other families.
It's just kind of like, it's the gossip. It's kind of the legend that's been built up through, gossip, but it does feel like that distraction from the reality of what's going on with her. So it's not that they're necessarily the baddies, but certainly, you know, it's a surprise for Kamala as she gets in and sees the woman that's been in these visions.
Exactly. And it adds an extra question, I suppose, to what happened in that first episode when she first got the power from the Bangles and went into this otherworldly vision moment.
Yeah.
There were loads of creatures inside that. We were thinking maybe they were Kree, maybe there was a connection there with Captain Marvel, maybe it was a dead world that she went into, and those are the people from the past. All their eyes were open watching her as she flipped through their world, and I wonder if that's what awakened this connection with Cameron and his mom, if they kind of sent out a wave across the world to tell them someone has awakened the power again, kind of thing, you know?
Well, and also from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that sort of idea of the wave of the Terrigen Mist awakening the Inhumans very much was a part of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So it could be in that similar vein,
Yeah. So yes, more to find out, of course, about these characters in the future, and I hope we get a big data dump next episode about what's happening in the family and
what
this legacy is.
Answers.
Exactly. Anything else about Cameron and his mom that you want to talk about here?
I'm surprised she wasn't in the passenger seat.
Oh, no. You have to have the big reveal. Turn around. She's in the back seat of the car. Love it. Let's get on to marvelous moment number 3 then. I want to talk about the mosque board. Really, I want to talk about Nakia in this episode. We saw her introduced last episode, just a couple of moments with her, but I really like this really central relationship between herself and Kamala in this episode. I love that we got to experience them in the mosque, and I loved the kind of underlining of some of the elements that they have to deal with as young girls, having to go to the mosque every week, being separated from the men, not being able to hear the actual lecture that's being told in the mosque because they're being stuck in the side room and it's full of damp and the walls got cracks in it, all that kind of stuff. And Nakia kind of going, well, you know, we're in a new world here. We're in America. We're learning about democracy, so I should have the opportunity to be on the mosque board. So, I really like that conversation they also have about the hijab that Nakia chooses to wear. And part of it is because when Muslims see her, they see her as being too white for them, and when white people see her, that she's too Muslim for them.
Yeah, and she just made a choice.
And she made the choice, put on the hijab, and now she feels like herself. She's doing this all for herself. Exactly. She's not trying to impress anybody anymore. But I love that we have a little discussion about that here, and why she's the person she is.
Exactly, and I loved how that tied into Kamala as well, because we have that moment where Kamala's nose flares up with the light.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, why is that happening?
Yeah.
And then she runs off, and Nakia comes in thinking it's because she's starting to go through with puberty and the menstruation, and so has gotten the thing that's fallen on the floor is a tampon and a sanitary towel, and just that conversation between Kamala and Nakia about things are changing, you know, from Kamala biologically, you know, in reality, but also because she's now got this superpower that she can throw hard light out. But and then with Nakia about how she is just fitting in and recognizing who she is, and not that she has to behave, one way in front of some people, another way in front of another group of people. So I really liked that. And I mean, even just at the Id Festival, I love that Bruno is invited along to that, and he's and I thought where he says it's not too colourful, is it? And Kamala's mom was like, I don't know what you mean.
I don't even understand that question.
Yeah, it's like colour is just inherent here, it's just love that.
But you can see it again. It's because he's not a member of the community, but he's a member of their family, and they're inviting him along to celebrate with them. And he's kind of going, should I be even wearing these clothes? These are not the kind of clothes I'd be wearing. I'm a jeans and t-shirt kind of guy.
And it's I mean, even earlier with Muneeba, where Kamala has blacked out and she's waking up and she says, have you eaten too little or too much? It's just I love the dynamic of the mother and father in this show. It's just really, really good.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, the way Nakia approaches her father for his vote is absolutely hilarious. The idea that he's going
white whale.
Yeah, absolutely.
White whale.
He's kind of going, well, of course my vote's going to go to my best friend who's also running for the council. And she is explaining to him that, but she's come to this country and their whole family are over here and they have learnt about democracy, and would she disappoint Kamala and her by taking away their idea of democracy? Like, not only is she Kamala's best friend, she's also a daughter to him, just like Kamala is. Would you disappoint both of your daughters? I love that he's left with just the jaw wide open and his friend is looking at him, who thought he could count on his vote, and he's holding the sign for Vote Nakia. I just think it's really funny. I love the manipulation of her. It's great.
But as well, I love at the Id Festival, we have the Illuminantes, but there's the Mosque Bros, the Pious Boys, the Insta Clique, all these different groupings of people. It is, and that kind of just connects to what Nakia is talking about. There's all these different groupings of people, both within the Muslim world, but in wider society, where she's ultimately said, I'm just going to be who I am and wear this, and and she even says she hoped that she would annoy certain people by doing that, because I guess she's just sick of having to explain herself or feeling sort of unsure because they think she's being too Muslim or too white, whatever it might be. The other thing on Nakia as well, she has her runners stolen from the shoe thief of the mosque, which seems to be the boy who was taking the photo, the pink runners there.
I'm going to have to give a shout out to Parthenia Locklear, one of our wonderful fellow defenders, who seems to have noticed this, that the boy that Kamala goes to save is wearing a pair of the same trainers that Nakia described as being stolen. They're in pink as well, so it seems to have stood out to Parthenia. So so maybe he's the shoe thief. Now, it would seem weird that wouldn't be resolved in a later episode, so I presume that's going to come back in the future. But a good catch there by Parthenia that potentially this kid
absolutely
kind of deserved the broken ankle. Let's say. I presume he's not going to be stealing too many more shoes if he has a broken ankle now.
I must say the whole saving of the kid by Kamala I really liked, where she's treating it like a suicide and he's just kind of like, what? I fell, I'm falling, I'm not trying to kill myself. Let's take your mind off it. What's your favorite food? It's ice cream on pizza, and there's some of the people watching, did I hear ice cream and pizza? So I'm half expecting that this is going to be something that will show up again, someone trying out ice cream and pizza. But I love that Kamala is treating it like a suicide jump, and he's like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, we'll go with it. Yes, it's ice cream and pizza. So I thought that was really good.
Yeah, really good. And interesting that she did technically save him, but almost almost lost him. Like, he was quite far from the ground
from the vision.
when the vision came in. Exactly.
It distracted her. She
Yeah.
kind of blanks out. in
And
a
luckily,
sense.
she was able to slow his fall enough that it only ended off with a broken ankle or a sprained ankle when he landed. So I enjoyed that, though. I enjoyed that she does get to use her powers and show off. I love that the crowd are shouting out Nightlight, which is the name that Zoe's given her when confronted with it. She'll have to get rid of that Captain Marvel cosplay costume that she has. She'll have to get her own Miss Marvel outfit in the series.
I'm
because
guessing.
you can't really have two heroes wearing exactly the same outfit.
No.
She's going to have to get her own costume as the
But
series
I
goes on.
love that, Zoe as well, and you hear it at the crowd when she's saving the kid, is calling her Nightlight, but we have Nakia saying budget Captain Marvel. And I love her. She says, thank you.
Thank you.
Just under her breath. She's like, what? And it's just really good.
Yeah.
Love that.
I also love that Zoe's kind of getting into trouble for trying to use her connection with Ms. Marvel to get herself more followers on Instagram, because she has got more followers on Instagram. She got all of the Department of Damage Control who are trying to find Ms. Marvel, have found her and bring her in for questioning. This is how they get their connection to Ms. Marvel, track her down effectively. They bring her in, interrogate her, and they start interrogating her in a really odd way, where they start with, was it your sister? Oh, was it someone from a different background? Is it someone maybe Middle Eastern? Oh, is it someone from South Asia maybe? Which perks the ears up on Zoe. And they do have a conversation in front of her that I'm not sure. It feels like a conversation they should have been having in another room, where they're saying, right, we're going to go and look in all the local churches, the local community places, the mosques, and remember the FBI already have those under surveillance. And it feels like a weird conversation to have in front of Zoe.
Yeah.
It feels like if that was a real conversation, if they were really pointing out that the FBI have mosques under surveillance, that they'd have that in a different room.
Yeah.
So I feel like it was there to give Zoe some information that Damage Control want her to know, something like that. Or maybe there's something else about the Damage Control people. Maybe they're Skrulls. Maybe there's
it.
something else about them.
They seem slightly shady. And I don't know whether they should be feeling that shady.
Yes, exactly.
So there is something up. There's something not right with these two members of Damage Control.
Yes, I agree.
So it could be Skrull.
We're gonna start looking for Skrulls everywhere, because Secret Invasion starring Nick Fury is coming really, really soon. So they're gonna start they're gonna have to start setting this up somewhere in the world. Maybe this is it. Do you know why else I'm excited to mention Nick Fury again, John?
Go on.
Did you hear Samuel L. Jackson this week? He was asked, he hasn't won an Oscar yet, and he was asked, does he want to win one over the rest of his career? And he said, I'd rather just keep playing Nick Fury than winning an Oscar.
Excellent.
There you go, my man.
There we go.
My man, Nick
Brilliant
Fury.
stuff.
Love it. Anything else about the episode you want to talk about outside of our marvelous moments, John?
No, I think that is everything I have here.
Excellent. I just wanted to mention two quick things that I liked in this episode. We mentioned last episode about the cool way that they use text messages appearing on the road and around them. I liked in this episode it was on her bedspread when she was talking to Cameron. It kind of came up in stitching on her bedspread, the messages back and forth between the two of them. And also when she had thought she'd saved the kid, you see these cool Instagram posts or social media posts that are going up of the things that she thinks is happening in the world. If she saves this kid, she'll suddenly become this social media influencer almost. She'll get loads of followers and everybody will know her name, kind of thing. And then it all falls apart directly afterwards. I love these touches in here because in the last episode, those came from Adil Al-Arbi and Bilal Fallah, the directors of that first episode. That was their choice to start off the show that way. But it's giving an opportunity for the director of this episode, Mira Menon, to put her own stamp on it, slightly different from what we saw. It's not just the daydreams of Kamala that we're seeing. Yeah. It's other things that are going on, other ways of expressing it this episode.
It's like where we get Kamala and Cameron sort of being drawn, and then it ends up on her as a drawing on a notebook. Really good. You know, all the stuff with the fire and the plus 100 around Cameron as he's coming out of the pool after his belly flop.
Yeah.
You know, it's just all these little touches that just add. I mean, it reminds me of Heartstopper. You know, I guess this idea of using these additional things, to express something going
Exactly.
on within the frame.
Yeah.
And
And
it's just being used again to good effect here.
Absolutely. And one influence we didn't mention last episode, and I just want to mention it here because we didn't call it out. It is definitely influenced by Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the Edgar Wright movie, the movie version, not just the comic book. It's definitely influenced by that. And the reason it's 100% influenced by that, and I didn't mention it last week, is because that's the movie that Kamala is watching on TV is Scott Pilgrim versus the World. She's watching it in the first episode. So there is a direct connection there, as to kind of say thanks to Scott Pilgrim versus the World for
and Edgar
for
Wright.
that influence. And Edgar Wright, of course.
You should have done Ant-Man.
Yeah, and that's obviously why she's also a fan of Ant-Man as well. So, excellent. That's it. That's it for notes, and the episode itself. Overall, John, do you defend Miss Marvel episode 2 Crushed?
I really do. I'd give it 4.5 Illuminantes out of 5.
Fantastic.
I just think it's just really easy to watch, and it's just nicely, subtly, very lightly sort of rammed with stuff.
Yeah.
It's not heavy. It's not forced. It's just, it's about teenagers and not having that burden or that weight on them that adults get, and that, they're still living at home with their parents. They're still, you can sense Bruno has more of that because he's on his own, but he also understands how welcoming Kamala's family is. So it's just that lovely lightness of touch.
Absolutely.
And
I do feel I'm learning.
which I think's really good.
Yeah, and I do feel I'm learning loads about a community I don't know much about, as well. I think they're doing a really deft job of being able to put this into the story. I also defend this episode. Really enjoyed it. Looking forward to it every week now. I said before that this is a great opposite show to be covering than The Boys, because The Boys is getting more stressful every week with more and more blood and more carnage going on. And then we tune in on Wednesdays to Miss Marvel to get some fun, enjoyable Marvel shows. So.
I mean, even the contrast to Moon Knight.
Yes.
And,
yeah, absolutely.
very kind of, yes, had comedy and fun in it with Stephen Grant. But as I say, I think it's just the overarching feel of lightness, even though there's some, I guess with the reveal at the end of Cameron and his mum being the person from the visions, get a bit more serious for it. But
I guess we might be getting an antagonist in the show now.
I just like the sort of delving into that teenage world.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Excellent stuff. John, while you're away, I had to rename the pub quiz for the show because as we see in this episode, Kamala doesn't drink. She's only 16.
That is true.
So we've moved to a slushy bar quiz. Okay.
Tons of them in Orlando.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, loads of slushy. But there were alcoholic slushies as well.
Oh, always
Lovely.
good. Always good. And then 30-degree temperatures, I can understand.
Yes,
40-degree
definitely.
temperatures
Yes.
or 100 million degrees temperatures, like sometimes feels in Orlando. I'm sure you needed them. We need to give the second question for our slushy bar pub quiz. John, what's the question for this week?
Yes, question 2. When Kamala is speaking with her nanny on the phone, why must her grandmother suddenly leave and hang up from the conversation?
Very interesting one. Ooh, interesting. I think you might have to go back and watch that scene to find out that answer. John, going to get the question one more time?
When Kamala is speaking with her nanny, why does her grandmother have to suddenly leave the conversation?
Very good. Very good. That's the second question of 6 that we'll be giving out for the Miss Marvel slushy pub quiz question. No, slushy bar quiz question. That's it. All you need to do is gather together all the answers for those 6 questions. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with each of the correct answers.
Yes.
And you could be in with the chance of getting your hands on some Ms. Marvel goodies.
Indeed.
Excellent. This episode of TV Podcast Industries is brought to you by our supporters over on Patreon, including Oren Dix. Thank you so much, Oren, for your support.
Yeah, thanks so much, Oren.
You can support us monthly for any amount over on patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries. Or if you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you can pop on over to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI to buy us a coffee over there. Thank you so much to everybody who's been supporting us.
Yes, really, really great. And thank you so much for all your support. It's really good. Remember, you can also support us by subscribing to the podcast and sharing it with your family and friends. Because remember, Sharing the podcast is, of course, sharing the love.
Absolutely. Speaking of our wonderful fellow defenders, let's get over some feedback about the first couple of episodes.
Yes. We got an email in from Coffee and Vodka who says, greetings, fellow completely charmed defenders. Is Miss Marvel so incredibly sweet, innocent, and generally upbeat because of its very well coordinated writing, directing, animated aspects, and wonderful acting by Iman Vellani in the title role? Or does it just seem that way by comparison after watching The Boys? Even Cameron, whose motivations seemed suspect from the word go, felt like a contributor to the cotton candiness, just like the rest of the supporting cast. The MVP of this episode for me was Yasmin Fletcher as Nakia, the victim of public perception from two separate worlds. It seemed very from the heart. I honestly never thought I'd like this show as much as I do, but here we are. 5 family secrets out of 5. Peace and take care, Coffee and Vodka. Thank you so much, Coffee and Vodka. It must certainly be the contrast and comparison with The Boys for sure. I think even ultimately Moon Knight to some extent. But I think, the combination of everything is making this just really, really upbeat. But I think interspersed within all of it, they're talking about the British partition of India, which was a disaster. It was a disaster for people that lived there. They're,
and the following war that was caused by
the Civil War. Exactly. There's, the like Nakia here, and just that perception from different communities. You're to this, you're to that, you're to the other. And that, that idea of difference. So interspersed within this this lightness of touch. They're dealing with some really heavy stuff, but it's just done in a light way.
Exactly.
And it's even like with Kamala's mum, Maniba, just her relationship with her husband and with Kamala is both, slightly severe, but also loving and tender and respectful, between both of them.
Absolutely.
And yet she's also there really putting her foot down about this family secret as well. And there's an undercurrent of darkness there that she doesn't want her, young daughter from knowing about. It's something that is being hidden. So,
but there's even just that touch of Mr. Khan saying, we came to America so that our children could do whatever they wanted to, and her going, well, almost whatever they wanted to.
Exactly.
There's just that underlying piece where she is the one that wants to be in control of her family's destiny, and whatever that will mean in the future when we hear about what their past was like, what the history of the family was. Everybody knows most mothers are like this, really, the people that want to make sure their kids do the best. But I love that she has a little qualifying piece to her where it's always the best, but within limits.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of her piece.
So I kind of think it's a little bit of column A, column B, ultimately.
Exactly.
Sure.
And you're totally right. Yasmin Fletcher as Nakia is fantastic in this episode. Really, really like that introduction. I like that they kind of kept it to Bruno in the first episode, Nakia in this episode, so that we can get the reasons why Kamala would be friends with both of them, because we now know them both better by having them separated and having a story with each of them, I think. Yeah,
excellent stuff. Thanks so much, Coffee and Vodka.
Thanks, Coffee Vodka. We also got an email in from Chris Ryan, who said, fun episode in Miss Marvel episode 1. With respect, though, the episode takes place in Jersey City, New Jersey, not New York. And comics do exist. Her homemade Captain America comic is hilariously priced at $10. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I don't know why, but for some reason, I had mentioned at the beginning of the episode that it takes place in Jersey City, it takes place in New Jersey, and for some reason I suddenly went into saying New York a couple of times. I think because they were going off to Avengers Con, and when we've been at big Comic-Cons, it's been at the Javits Center in New York, so for some reason I was thinking, that's where they've gone to New York City, but it's New York State, New Jersey is a city, and New York City are both in there.
And I guess out of town as we would be, we don't get the nuances in the same way. It's kind of a bit like people that would go to, whatever city where there's a intense rivalry, or a strong kind of identity compared to another part of it, whether that's like in Manchester or versus Liverpool or London or
even
Dublin.
or even
Like,
people that think that we're podcasters from the UK rather than from Ireland.
Yeah,
You know, that
exactly.
kind of thing.
So,
Exactly. So my apologies. That was totally unintentional. I did write it down in my notes that it was New Jersey, not New York, but for some reason it came out in our conversation last week. Great to hear from you though, Chris. Thanks so much for getting in contact.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
John Daniel sent in an email as well. He said, "Hi all, I just wanted to pop in with a short note to 100% defend this new series. It wasn't on my radar at all, so it's a real pleasant surprise. I'm a 52-year-old white dude who is genuinely thrilled that Marvel is demonstrating real representation with this series and Moon Knight as well. I couldn't wait to share it with my wife, which is more than I could say for the first episode of the new season of The Boys. I thought the direction was clever and the on-screen animation was so fun, especially some of the text conversations being conveyed in neon signs and crosswalks. Anyway, I'm a huge fan of your coverage on TV podcast industries of so many of my favorite movies and shows. Keep defending, John from Chicago." Thanks so much, John.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. That's really kind of you to say. I think you're right. I think all that on-screen animation is done really, really well.
Yeah.
And, I mean, even just the end credits. I was mentioning about Bruno with the atom rings around him, you know, science and tech. But I love that Nakia as well on the end credits. It's like, change is here, but it's also change is her. But they have
good.
the E a different color, so you can read it both ways.
Very good.
So it's really good. Like, you know, just really kind of little nods and, you know, a bit of the depth that brings, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Great to hear from you, John. I know the difference between watching something like Miss Marvel and going, you should watch this, and then watching something like The Boys, and if someone walks into the room, you want to pause it and change the channel in case they think you're watching some crazy show. So totally understand.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks so much again, John. We also got an email in from Jerry. Jerry says, "Hey guys, this episode was great character building. We are 2 episodes in and we don't have a villain of some sort. Still liking the whole Scott Pilgrim look of the show. I know the show is a setup for the Marvels movie. I also know this show is geared for a younger audience, but I will continue to watch to see where it goes. It's polar opposite to the show The Boys. This is lemonade and The Boys is Guinness with a shot of Jameson." Jerry in Niceville. Yes, I think also with The Boys you could probably say followed by a Jaeger bomb, by sort of 3 litres worth of cheapest cider, followed by another Guinness and Jameson shot.
God, it's been a long time since I had a Guinness with a Jameson chaser. That is a tough old drink to be drinking. Yes, and definitely, yes, Miss Marvel is much more like lemonade.
Yes, definitely.
Excellent stuff. Thanks, Jerry. I do
you,
think
Jerry.
we may have a little touch of a possible antagonist, let's say, at the end of this episode. But you're right, no big battle to fight yet.
Yeah, well, at the moment it's the Department for Damage Control.
Maybe.
I'm guess. I mean, they're the ones that seem most kind of suspect, really.
Yeah, I
guess.
just think that conversation they had in front of Zoe this week seemed odd, and I wonder if they're the people that are looking for superheroes to bring into the Young Avengers or something. Are they? Is it less that they want to capture Kamala than they want to bring her into a new supergroup,
Definitely.
kind of thing. Supergroup seems like a weird name for that, but you get me. Over on Facebook, Heather Wallace had some thoughts about episode 1. She said this was so charming and felt so authentic. I love the visuals from the daydreams and the in-universe podcasting, and I enjoyed the friendship between Kamala and Bruno. I want to find out why a teenage boy seems to live on his own. I laughed at Kamala's mother appearing with cartons of food for Bruno and saying it's her superpower. Considering how she tried to hide the bracelet, which she obviously recognized, maybe she does have superpowers.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
That was my theory. She'd when Kamala had arrived home from being out at AvengerCon, her mother was waiting in the room, and she's about to say something, and Kamala says, "Oh, you're just going to tell me another story about Nani?" And she goes, "Oh, you knew what I was going to say." And I was wondering whether she was actually going to tell her a story about herself and the dreams she had when she was younger, or maybe the superpowers she had. So it's entirely possible that her own mother had some experience of this herself, not just the stories of her grandmother and great grandmother.
Yeah, I might need to watch episode 1 again. I mean, I loved it, but I think it swept over me because I was still jet lagged.
Maybe, but you did enjoy it.
Oh no, I
You
did.
laughed,
I
you
did.
laughed.
Really did. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Heather. Also, Brandy Anderson says, I love Kingo and Kingo Senior name drops. I really enjoyed how seamlessly they have woven in the high school and the heritage aspects of Kamala's life. I know there have been some blowback on changes they made to the character's powers, origin, and abilities. In the comics, Kamala is an Inhuman, but the MCU looked like they were going to go with an artifact actually being the source of her powers. But interestingly, in this episode, Bruno says the power is not coming from the bangle, but from within her. I don't know much about Inhumans, just what was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but does that mean the bangle could work like the Terrigen Crystal?
I think so.
Would it be able to activate other Inhumans? Or is it still tied solely to Kamala's ancestral line? Or could it be something else I haven't thought of yet? I thought something was up with Cameron. I'm not sure if his mother is the big bad of this season, since we have the Department of Damage Control and its agents that give me Director Hayward vibes,
Very good.
especially since this is the second time we've seen them threatening minors. Yeah, which also doesn't seem like, an official federal department.
Yeah,
And so
you're right.
there's something a little sketchy from these two agents, even though we have seen one of them before, from Spider-Man.
Yes, who also threatened Peter Parker.
That
and,
is true.
and all of his friends.
True. So
He's certainly very manipulative, as we saw him back in the Spider-Man movie as well. Director Hayward, if you remember, was the director of who was investigating Wanda in WandaVision.
Is something up with Cameron? It must be the British accent.
It must be. It must be. Thanks so much for that, Brandy.
Yeah, thank you, Brandy.
Dr. Bob Phillips says, I loved the way this lent all the way into the Muslim part of the first Marvel Muslim superhero, from the rubbish women's mosque and the hijab being part of Nakia to the celebration of Eid al-Adha and the Insta-Clique. Never expected a naughty internet joke. The whole thing is so much more real than I expected a teen soup big bucks show to be. Well done, Marvel.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally agree,
Thank you, Dr. Bob. It is. It's such a great little show.
It is, yeah.
Great big show, in fact. Yes. Yeah. Thanks again, Dr. Bob. Salim Akizla says, I have to admit I was skeptical coming into this show. Though my faith has long since lapsed, I was raised on Islam and I'm a first-generation American. I've seen other superhero shows introduce Muslim characters to great fanfare, only to say, hey, look how Muslim these characters are, all while picking and choosing which tenets of Islam they want to highlight and which ones they want to ignore. This show so far, especially by putting the family center stage, really does it well. As Irene pointed out on episode 1 podcast, they don't make a big deal out of it. They just show that this is how the family is. My wife was a bit critical of the overprotective parents trope, but it looked true to life to me. This episode, my eyes welled up a bit when the dad said they brought their family to America so their kids could be whatever they want. On a lighter note, Nightlight sounds like a soup name from The Boys. Yeah, indeed.
It does, doesn't it?
And also, I'm kind of like, that power, is it just, it would attract mosquitoes?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the nightlights that attract flies, moths, and mosquitoes. Yeah. I was obviously in Orlando.
In Orlando,
for too
yes.
long.
That's how it was.
I had a gecko in my hotel room as well.
Oh, very cool.
Yes, I managed to get it out though, because it would have died because of the air conditioning.
Yes.
Like these creatures need to thermoregulate, and it was about -5 with the aircon on. So yeah, I saved a gecko whilst I was on.
Well done, John. Well done. You're a true superhero.
I am. Lizard man.
Absolutely. And thanks so much for your thoughts, Salim. As I say, I'm learning loads about the Muslim community from what they're putting on screen here. And I like how they're doing it. I like how it is focused on this family, their experience. I love that we got the representation of young kids who are bored at the service in the mosque, taking photographs themselves on Instagram. I love that we get all of these, because no religion is one thing.
Exactly.
And it's so often the case when you bring religion into a show that you go, exactly as you said, Salim, oh, this is exactly how everybody has to react because we're taking this exact representation to say these are definitely this type of person. But everybody here is different. And I like that they're doing a great job of showing how the entire community is.
Yeah.
Really good.
I think so. And I mean, you only have to think of your own family, don't you? Families must be a writer's dream because they offer so much material. I mean, we say it's tropes, but it's just because we recognize it so often. And whatever family unit that you have, it's the people, whether it's friends, companions, family, relatives that are close, but it does generate so many stories that I guess for writers writing on TV, it makes sense to put that as the heart and the center of which everything else revolves because it can create so much fun, so much drama, so much tragedy.
Absolutely.
It's really good, I think.
And you can certainly see that one of the co-creators is one of the executive producers for this show and is involved in the writing of this show because this is how the comic book goes as well. It is a lot about Kamala and her family. It's not just about her being a young superhero, which is the trap that a lot of comic book fall into. This is about her family reaction. This is about the family and friends that are around her. So I'm really glad they kept that for the show as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Salim.
Absolutely. Also got a piece of feedback in from Michael Booth who says, episode 1 was good. This one was great. I enjoyed every minute of this one. It all felt seamlessly woven together. The teen angst, the superhero training, the cultural setting, the family drama was all pulled together so well. The only thing missing was all the background animations. They were far more subtle this episode. Yeah, I think I was saying that earlier on as well, that the difference between the two directors, I think, may have had a hand in them feeling a bit more subtle this episode. Yeah. There was a great interview with the two directors of the first episode who had proposed this to Kevin Feige, that they wanted to do all the stuff from Scott Pilgrim, that type of thing, in the background. And he just said, you can do what you want. It's your show. Just don't have it in every single scene. That was Kevin Feige's only direction. Just don't put it everywhere so people get tired of it. Do what you want. It's your show. But,
and I think that's maybe where the subtle side of things, I mean, like the ones on the bed sheets, you could hardly tell were happening. Yeah. Where others, depending on the moment, are, the bright neon, kind of lights.
Yeah.
So, good stuff. Thanks, Michael.
Everywhere. Thanks, Michael, and thanks everybody for sending in your feedback about this episode of Ms. Marvel. You can continue to email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with your thoughts about any of the shows that we're covering, or you can contact us on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. Join us on there. The spoiler post up for every episode of every show that we're covering.
Yes, and of course we're also over on Twitter at TV Pod Industries.
Yes.
So we will be back. This is just the beginning of the Ms. Marvel podcast. Well, I guess the second beginning of Ms. Marvel podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We will be back next week with episode 3. And of course, we are also covering The Boys season 3 over on our main feed as well, where it is a slightly different change of pace and focus compared to Ms. Marvel.
Yes.
But sure, the more diversity, the merrier it is, I guess.
Absolutely.
From chalk to cheese, from liquid to solid, from land to sea, you name it. That's
from
where
Ms.
we
Marvel
go.
to The Boys. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
We will also be kicking off our coverage of Umbrella Academy in the next couple of weeks. I think it's actually coming to Netflix in the next week or two. We're probably not going to be able to cover it straight as it comes out, but we will be covering it in between this show and the next Marvel show in August, I think. Yeah. So She-Hulk, I think, is towards the end of July.
Certainly is.
Yeah. Thanks for staying with us, and thanks for joining us once again for our Ms. Marvel podcast.
Yes. Thank you so much, fellow Defenders, for joining us. It is great chit-chatting, great to be back, and great catching up with you. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep marveling.
Bye.
Bye.